that you get started, and you can tell everybody how you do it.
Will do. Will do. Thank you. As she said, my name is Erwin Mayer, and I'm the Executive Director of St. Leonard's Ministries. I've held this position for approximately a year and a half, just under 2 years. And I took over from Walter Boyd, who took over from Bob Doherty, who ran St. Leonard's for about 30 years, and really built it into the agency that it is today. Since 1954, St. Leonard's has been located on the near west side of Chicago, and we've been helping men and women released primarily from the Illinois Department of Corrections re-enter society. St. Leonard's was started back in 1954 by Father James Jones. He was a chaplain, an Episcopal chaplain at what is now Cook County Jail, and he recognized fairly early on that men exiting jail or exiting prison needed a little bit of support if they were going to make a successful re-entry back into the community. When Father Jones started, he at first, before St. Leonard's House was actually formed, would have men that he chaplained at Cook County Jail show up at his apartment, and he would take them in. Mrs. Jones and their 4 or 5 children, I believe they had, would welcome them in for a few days at a time. Some of the men would babysit for the children, from what I understand from St. Leonard's history. And after a little while, I suspect Mrs. Jones finally said, it's time to do something a little bit different. So St. Leonard's House was formed. It's located on the corner of Warren and Hoyne. The building dates back to the late 1800s, but it initially had room for about 25 men at a time. And really what St. Leonard's has grown into is not just emergency housing for men and women that come out of prison, which we provide at St. Leonard's House and at Grace House, which is our women's program, but it tries to address all of the very significant barriers that these men and women face when they return to communities that they left many, many years ago. In some cases, the men left 20 years ago, 25 years ago. We have one man in St. Leonard's right now who spent 47 years in prison and is out for the first time in a very, very long time. But the men come to St. Leonard's House, they come to Grace House, the women come to Grace House, and they're provided basic housing, food, shelter, clothing, and they meet with our program staff and case managers, roughly 75 or 80% of whom have gone through St. Leonard's House themselves. They have lived the experience of incarceration. Many have grown up in the communities on the west and south sides of Chicago, and they understand the issues that the men and women face when they come to St. Leonard's. They're afraid, they're uncertain what the future holds, they're excited because they're released from prison, but they don't know what the next step looks like. And they don't really have the ability in many cases to understand those next steps. So our staff who have lived that experience welcome them. There's no judgment. Our arms are always open, our doors are always open, and we take these men and women in and we help take care of them. We help provide structure, we help provide case management, we identify what their individual challenges are, and we try to put together a service plan that's responsive to their individual needs. These are needs that take the form of mental health help. We have a relationship with Adler University where they provide psychologists and interns who are on staff who come to St. Leonard's and meet with the men and the women. They do a psychological assessment. They do individual therapy sessions at least once a week, and then they engage in group therapy sessions which take into account issues like anger management, thinking for change. They try to help the men and women understand how to react to difficult situations in a different way. Control their anger, help choose alternatives to violence and other potential paths, kind of show them a different way around the problem. So Adler works with them fairly intensely during their entire stay at St. Leonard's House and at Grace House. We also have on-site substance abuse counselors. Healthcare Alternative Systems provides intensive outpatient services and outpatient services to the men and women of St. Leonard's. So most of the men that come to St. Leonard's have either active or lingering substance abuse issues. 95% of them are the statistics. And they address those issues in a very methodical sort of way for a period of approximately 3 months. And then we have a relapse prevention specialist who works with the men and women after that. The men stay at St. Leonard's House for about 6 months, sometimes 8 months, depending upon the severity of their issues. The women come to Grace House for approximately 8 months, some stay as long as a year, and during that time they take advantage of all of the programming that we have available. The substance abuse, the mental health, life skills classes. Many of the men and women that come to St. Leonard's haven't had a real job before. They got involved in gang activities or illegal activities very early in their lives, never had a real job that they had to report to, never had to show up on time, never had a boss that they reported to. So we have lots of life skills classes that help the men and the women sort of address those basic issues. How do you show up for work on time? How do you address conflict in the workplace? How do you deal with family situations? A lot of things that we all sort of take for granted are things that our men and women sort of need to sort of understand and learn again and practice before they re-enter society. But St. Leonard's programming is really divided into 3 separate parts: the emergency housing, which we've talked about so far, which is St. Leonard's House and Grace House, and then there's permanent supportive housing, which is really the next step. After the men and women complete the basic programming at St. Leonard's House and the Grace House, they then have the opportunity to move on for an additional period of time into what we call St. Andrew's Court, which is a 42-room, single-room occupancy apartment building that St. Leonard's owns and operates, and for which we provide supportive services. And the men have up from a minimum of a year to sometimes several years to stay there, continue to solidify the gains that they've made at St. Leonard's, continue working on substance abuse issues, continue working on mental health issues, save up money for a security deposit on their own market rate apartment, and really continue to make progress and slowly re-enter into society. We have a similar sort of situation at Harvest Commons, where we have an additional 17 apartments available for men and women who have completed the basic programming at St. Leonard's and at Grace House, and we again provide a director of supportive services at that site. The last sort of major program area that we have is the Michael Barlow Center. It's where we provide workforce development and education. We have an adult high school completion program. Roughly half of the men and women that come to St. Leonard's do not have a high school diploma. Some have earned a GED during their time in prison, many have not. So we have a semester-long high school completion program that provides at the end a diploma that's endorsed by Regina Dominican High School up in Wilmette, and it's designed to complete the basics necessary in order to achieve a high school diploma. It's primarily a liberal arts-based degree. Many of the men and women that complete the program are very invigorated. It is an achievement that they've not achieved before, and it really is a confidence booster for many of the men and women that complete the program. We graduate about 25 residents or participants every semester, roughly 50 a year, and I would encourage you all to attend a graduation ceremony, which we do hold twice a year at St. Malachi Church on the near west side. If you've never seen enthusiasm before, you will certainly see it at those graduation ceremonies. We do invite members of the general public in for that, and we do offer that service to anyone in the Chicago area who has a criminal background. So you don't have to be a resident at St. Leonard's House or a resident at Grace House in order to take advantage of that program. These are incredibly exciting graduations, and you'll see people strutting their stuff. They are really proud of themselves after they complete that program. And for many, it gives them sort of the next step to the next level of education. Many will go to city colleges, many will go from there and attempt to pick up additional skills, additional degrees. We have several of our residents that are in nursing right now and completing their nursing degree. We have one who is in the Rush Master's program. So there is opportunity for advancement for those that take advantage of some of the programs that we have available. We also offer 2 vocational training programs at St. Leonard's. We have a culinary program where we teach both basic culinary skills and advanced culinary skills. And then we operate a small social enterprise called Gracie's Catering, where you can have actual on-the-job experience in preparing meals and delivering them out to clients, primarily not-for-profits in the Chicago area, setting up the food, serving the food. It's a really good on-the-job training experience for the men and the women. And the culinary industry is very friendly to ex-offenders. The culinary industry is starved for employees, very easy to get in the door as a dishwasher, and if you're good, you'll very quickly move up the food chain, so to speak, into better paying jobs in the kitchen. The other training program that we have is a construction skills training program where we teach basic construction framing and plumbing and electrical work. That's really designed to teach our men and women basic construction skills, basic maintenance, custodial skills. We haven't been extremely successful in getting our men and women placed into union apprenticeships, but we're working on that. We're trying to expand that program right now. But a lot of them work for non-union home remodelers, home repair shops. It's an easy way to kind of set yourself up as a handyman or handy person and create your own job, because a lot of times it's difficult for our men and women to get jobs with employers. Stepping back just a little bit, the men and women that come to St. Leonard's have significant backgrounds. These aren't the guys that have had a drug transgression that has gone bad and they've gotten caught up in the war on drugs. These aren't the guys who have a couple of grams of this or a little amount of that. The guys that come to St. Leonard's are the guys who, and our average statistics are, they've been arrested 21 prior times, they've been convicted 9 prior times, and have spent 3 prior times periods of incarceration. So these are guys who have significant backgrounds, significant challenges. When you go to prison at age 15 and you haven't finished your high school diploma, you don't have a driver's license yet, you've never had a real job, you spend the next 20-some years in prison, you're going to have significant challenges when you come out in terms of getting a job, getting your high school education, getting safe, affordable housing, and really having any sort of traction to successfully re-enter into society. Very, very difficult. So we tend to deal with individuals who are difficult to place. I think a lot of the magic that happens at St. Leonard's, and we talked really briefly when I first came in about the success that occurs at St. Leonard's. This is Christopher Roach, our program director at St. Leonard's House.
Good morning.
The success in achieving the very, very low recidivism rate of St. Leonard's is partially just the basic housing, basic supportive community that occurs at St. Leonard's, a community of ex-offenders who have all lived that experience, a community of program staff who have lived that experience and who are now on the flip side, giving back and helping pull up the men and the women that just show up at St. Leonard's. It's basic inputs, but they make a tremendous amount of difference. If you've been in prison for 20 years or 25 years and you've been treated as a number and you've been treated as less than human, to come to a community that cares about you, that knows what you've been through, that cares about your progress, and that is there to provide the structure, the discipline, and the love to help you get to that next spot, I think that's really what makes the difference at St. Leonard's. Chris is a prime example of that, and Chris, why don't you tell us a little bit about your journey to St. Leonard's and what you do?
So, roughly 14 years ago, I'd been released from the Department of Corrections after serving my sentence for the crimes that I committed. Once I was released, I was told 2 things: congratulations and enjoy life. So you're given a $10 bill and a bus ticket or a train ticket to go back to Chicago and then get to the location that you're getting to. 9 times out of 10 where you're going, and this is not to take anything away from the Department of Corrections, but 9 times out of 10 where you're going are the very same places you come from, that are still broken, desolate, no hope, and in despair. So here it is, I'm just getting done serving roughly almost 10 years. 27 years old, go to a place, the first thing that I see when I walk in, that there are people shooting dice in the hallway, there's people snorting heroin in the hallway, there's people smoking marijuana in the hallway. And when I get upstairs, the first thing that I'm greeted with is, rent is $400 a month or $110 a week. You can't pay rent, you have no place to stay. You have no place to stay, you go back to prison. And that's what they meant. I had a $400 and some check I'd saved up roughly a couple months prior to release to kind of help me out when I got out. So I turned it over to him. I was then told that I had to go to the local DHS office, get a link card, turn it over to them, that will cover my food. And that happened last roughly 3 weeks. So the third week, the owner of the property came and told me again, rent is during the week. I explained to him I had no job, I'm on electronic monitoring, I'm 3 weeks out, I have no way of providing rent. So again, he explained to me, rent is $400 a month, $110 a week. You can't pay rent, you have no place to stay. You have no place to stay, you go back to prison. So I reached out to my parole agent, and he explained the same thing to me. Rent is $400 a week, $110, $400 a month, $110 a week. You can't pay rent, you have no place to stay. You just did a long sentence, you don't have anywhere to stay, you go back to prison. I ran. I'll be honest with you, I took off. I said, if I'm gonna go back, then I'm gonna go back for a reason. And if I'm gonna go back, I'm gonna do something good for my son before I go back financially, help him financially before I go back. Eventually I'll get caught. So here I am on 80th and Cottage Grove. I'm standing in front of the aid office, the public aid office. There's a young guy standing there selling dope. You know, he has a bankroll this big, folded up in one hand, and a pocket full of money in the other hand, and he counting it. I'm in a daze. I'm thinking about all I need to do is choke him out, take the money, give it to my son, and I'll run till they catch me. What happened was, it turned out that I'd been standing there for 10 minutes in a daydream, tears coming out of my eyes, and the same person I was contemplating robbing kept asking me, hey man, is you all right? What's wrong with you? You're standing here crying. So that was kind of like a reality check. So thank you.
Coffee break.
So I called my sister, Michelle. She's my sister from my father. And I told her what was going on, that I took off and I was running. And she told me to go to a place called St. Leonard's. She said her elder brother had went through this place 15 years prior. He no longer was using drugs. He had started his own construction business, bought his own first home, and he was doing everything right, and he was still going. So I walked from 80th and Ingleside to St. Leonard's, came to the door, asked if I can get in. He told me no. Told me that I was a dangerous person and I'd never set foot in here. So for 6 days, back to back, I traveled I walked to my mother's house and sleep at night, walk back to St. Leonard's, get there roughly 6:30 in the morning, and I wouldn't leave till 6:37 at night. And I just lingered, I just hung around, didn't know what I was looking for, or who I was going to talk to, even if I can get in here. But I can tell you one thing, I felt kind of safe there. There were people that I had gang rivals with, people that I had problems with in the past, people that I knew was arch enemies. They were sitting down playing chess together. They were listening to music together. They was chatting with one another. The sun was blazing in the courtyard. There's a big fluffy cat laying out on the sidewalk in the courtyard. There's birds chirping, there's squirrel playing in the courtyard, and it was people of all walks of life, all sitting in one place, enjoying life. So I wanted in. So I was a pain in their butt until someone had mercy on me. A person named Al Hunter, former program director, and he asked me, what did I want out of them? And my exact words was, I don't know what I want, but I can tell you this, whatever y'all got going on in here, I want part of it. That was 14 years ago. Still here today, trying to give back what was given to me 1,000,000,000 times over.
And through the success of this individual allowed me to transition, which took place sometime in 2006. I was going to chapel, and in the process of going through the chapel, I show you the strength of God. All I seen was high success rate. It was a paper that was stuck up on the wall. And I know at the time when I'm finna say, I snatched the paper down because I couldn't read it at the time because we was in transition of moving. And in prison, you have no say-so when you stop, where you go where they want you, when they want you, how you want you. So I grabbed it, put it in my pocket. And when I got back to my cell, I opened it up and read it. And now I can start from the top because all it grabbed my attention was high success rate. And it said St. Leonard's was the very first thing on there, St. Leonard's Ministries. So as I started to read, it started to tell you the programs and process that you need to go through to get to St. Leonard's. At this time, I still had a lot of years left because I just got out October 6th, so that was 2006. I got out 2017, October last year. And because me and my little brother come from a family which are upward individuals, that if you make a mistake that is not forward movement, if it's forward moving mistake, you can, that is not a mistake, that's actually a learning lesson. And we made a mistake because we chose to do something in the reverse. So our family believes that if that is the case, that the choice that you choose, and that's the bed that you make, you have to be the one that want to get up out of that bed and change the sheets. So when we seen that sign, knowing that me and my little brother were in there together, that there was not going to be an individual to provide for us when we left there, it was my focus as being the big brother, knowing my little brother going to leave him first, was to get him acclimated with everything that he would need to get to St. Leonard's. And we started to work on that in 2006. And he came home successful. Now he works there, and because his big brother is eventually going to come, he started the process for me to be able to transition. The reason is St. Leonard's is a place, like he said before, that is one, humbling, because you see other individuals went from the point where you were to further. So when it comes to seeing transition, you're really seeing it. You're actually seeing it because those individuals just left from where you were at, and they're moving through life. They're taking the steps that you need to get to the next point. So it's a motivating force because the individuals that are working there are also individuals that were in the same place that you are in. So when it comes to alleviating anything that may arise, it's simple. Because you know why? I can go to a fellow resident and say, hey man, how do I deal with this situation? And because also people like yourself, people like Erwin, it makes it even simpler because you know, a lot of times organizations start, they have
an agenda.
They always have an agenda, but there's different gates, so to speak, that you have to go and wait to get to. I don't have to. If I want to go talk to one of them, I just go and knock on the door and say, hey, how you doing? That makes it easier. That makes it more inviting. That makes it, you know, because the accessibility is easy, it's, you know, it helps a person that just came from the environment, which is prison, take their level of aggression, it helps them bring that down to, you know, see that, okay, I can do this. So that's also another motivator. And like I told you, I ended up going to prison from following individuals that they chose to do something wrong, and I could take the weight. What they did, I did not partake in, but I did choose to follow them. And because I chose to follow them, I can take the weight of choosing to follow the wrong individual. But right now, today, as a 43-year-old man, I choose to follow the successful individuals, because everybody chooses to follow someone. It's just you have to choose someone that's greater than yourself. And I made that choice before I got here. So that choice that I made has got me right here standing here talking to you guys.
You know, something that I found out over the years, you know, most of the people that come to St. Leonard's have no hopes. People are comfortable with doing what they've done all their life because it helped them get through the day. No one wanted to think further than the next morning. You know, my only plans was to make sure when I woke up that morning that I can survive through the day. You know, it's a little different now. You know, I plan a little bit more in advance. I do things differently. I wake up with a light heart. You know, people have come to St. Leonard's and came there hopeless and have become dreamers. You know, and they're actually carrying out their dreams. I know I am. I get up every day. I don't worry. I fuss at my son all day because I got a right to do that and he deserves it. You know, I come to work every day and try to help somebody just as somebody else helped me. And I try to pass that torch on to everybody else that I come in contact with. You know, something that Erwin said earlier was that when you give a person a sense of belonging, knowing that someone else cares about what happens with them, people tend to do better. And what's happening at St. Leonard's is living proof of that.
Definitely is. It's in the short time I've been there, it's there's a card with the front of St. Leonard's Ministry where you see them speak of St. Leonard's is the front part. And I started putting those business cards in my pocket, not because it's St. Leonard's is matter of fact, St. Leonard's is my business. Because I ran into some individuals that I used to bring food to that, you know, that were homeless. And he was asking me, where do I work? And I told him I don't have a job right now. I am actually homeless. He looked at me, he's like, not possible. I said, no, it is possible. I reached in my wallet, I pulled out the card, I told him, if you want to leave from this point and further yourself in any direction, you can go right now. You can go and you don't have to do this. And it's individuals there now because of that. And I believe that God puts you, we seem to think a lot of times that we go where we want, when we want, and that's not true. God puts you where he wants you, when he wants you. Right now, all of us in this room may think you came because you made the decision to, but God made that decision before you even thought about it, as well as for myself. So when it comes to intervening or meeting people, I have the belief that I'm there for a reason. So it's just for me to be able to use the discernment to be, what is it for? What, maybe to further, maybe to just get a hug, maybe, or just get a handshake, or, you know.
You guys are willing to take a couple questions?
Sure.
We're all for
Same with Erwin
questions.
and John.
Sure.
Before we take questions, I just want to introduce Joni Stallman, who is new to St. Leonard's. She joined maybe 2 or 3 months ago? 2 or 3 months ago. Joni comes to us from Illinois Department of Corrections. She had approximately 22 years there in various different capacities. And she is now our Chief Program Director, helping make sure that the programming we provide is the best possible programming we can, the most effective, the most evidence-based. And Joni can tell us a little bit about how St. Leonard's is viewed by IDOC and how this whole reentry space works, and where St. Leonard's fits into it.
So, as he said, I had 22 years with the Illinois Department of Corrections, and for a long stint, 6-7 years, I was involved in the Women's Division doing reentry and programs. So I was tasked with, as the Assistant Deputy Director, to connect the programs that we had going on inside, evaluate them, but see if we could connect them to the outside organizations. Reentry was getting a little bit more popular than when I first started at Corrections. When I was in that capacity, I would come to St. Leonard's, Grace House. The Michael Barlow Center opened about the time that I was doing that work. And I traveled the whole state. And I got to go to all the organizations, all the way from Southern Illinois up here, east, west, all of them. And many of the organizations throughout the state would ask me, how do we get better? How do we do what we need to do and be successful? And my answer always was, contact somebody at St. Leonard's Ministries. This is 15 years ago. They've always had the great reputation. They've always had the skills and the abilities to help individuals return to society and be successful. it's a great pleasure for me to work at St. Leonard's Ministries because I never thought it would happen, but as Chris was saying, sometimes God puts you in places where you don't know that you're gonna end up and you don't know what the plan is, but I'm here. And I'm super excited because St. Leonard's, Grace House, St. Andrew's Court and Harvest Commons, they truly make a difference. And I get overly excited. People ask me all the time, you know, you've spent all these years in corrections and aren't you afraid and aren't you, you know, intimidated? Are you nervous? And no, I'm not. You know, I don't think I ever was because I always was in the capacity to want to help and to be.
And you treated people nice.
Thank you, Chris. And so, you know, you don't try, you just have to have belief and you have to have hope. And as these individuals come through the door, I met Chris when he first came and, you know, he had his challenges and his questions and like he said, he can come to my door anytime and come speak to me. They can all come speak to any of us. And if you believe in second chances, come to St. Leonard's Ministries. You'll see a lot of success. And you'll see, it's fun for me to watch a person come in on their first day and to see who they are just a few months later. He spoke about an individual that's done over 40 years, close to 47.
Yeah, 47.
47 years. And he's just precious and he's so determined. And it's beyond my concept. I can't even imagine what it's like to have been in prison that long and to have the disposition that he has, but he believes. And he always says, I'm okay because I'm here. I know I'm getting the programs, I'm getting people to talk to, I'm getting the opportunity to look for a job, communicate with their parole agents so that they're staying on the right path with what the Illinois Department of Corrections expects from them, what society expects from them, what we expect from them, and they feel safe. So I don't know, I can keep going on. Go ahead, Chris.
Because of Joni's work inside also helped me before I even got here. In the Department of Corrections, you have something called Illinois Correctional Industries. Illinois Correctional Industries does what they produce different things like milk, juice for, you know, the Department of Correction. The facility, all the maintenance and the machines that they use are right now, they're up to date. They use these in the free world. Because the way it is designed, it helps a person to transition also because you're in a work environment using machines that are up to date, doing things that are up to date, and not only doing things, but it allows you to be able to save money. So when it came to me knowing that I'm going to come from that point to out here, I started putting my money away because even though I'm coming to St. Leonard's, it's still going to be things that I'm going to need to be able to go spend money on. That St. Leonard's may provide everything, but you still have to cushion yourself in some form. And that's what I did. And because Illinois Correctional Industries, when it comes to jobs, it's a plethora of jobs. Forklift certificate, they have numerous things. The whole Department of Corrections, when it comes to job-wise, should be geared at that, but it's not. Only a small number of individuals get a chance to be able to partake of becoming workers for Illinois Correctional Industries, which that is a thing that maybe, you know, we all can work on to make it bigger because those individuals are coming out, if they already have skills and knowledge and understanding of how to do certain things before they get here, when it comes to transitioning into a job, it's going to be simple because the job right now, the learning and the skills that they gave me in meat processing industry, I learned everything from production to maintenance to warehousing, and that's the whole process in a quick nutshell. And those things need to be widened. They're right now in a small little microcosm, meaning that it's not enough of them. And those things help make me, at this point, to be able to transition to get to this point because I was focused in Nina, and that job helped me focus to get out. So and that was part of Joni's working sheet. You know?
I truly feel privileged to be a part of St. Leonard's. I've been there for, like I say, about 2 years. I was a board member before that, a volunteer before that. There's something about welcoming new men and women to St. Leonard's. There's truly is a metal gate at the front of St. Leonard's house. And the men come with a history, but nobody at St. Leonard's sees that history. They are men, and women in need. They are here because they have nowhere else to go. They are here because they need a little help and human kindness and care and a little guidance. And it's really, truly a pleasure to be able to see people that way day after day after day. I feel truly privileged to be able to hear their stories. Everybody has a story. Some are quite detailed, some are quite long. And it's also a true pleasure to be a part of their journey, to be a part of their path back, to see them conquer these barriers, to see them conquer these incredible hurdles. It's seeing redemption. It's seeing redemption play out in front of you. And I think in this crowd, I can say it's seeing resurrection. It's seeing new life. From difficult circumstances to new life. It is truly a pleasure to be a part of. Yes?
One of the things that we've asked our speakers in this whole series, and that I'd like to ask you that you just hinted at it. So this isn't going to be a ball out of left field, but we're asking as a community, as a congregation of people who are interested in issues around our whole series of mass incarceration, how we as a faith community, as individuals in a faith community and as a community itself, can help. What kind of stuff can we do? And you said they started as a volunteer. What are the volunteer type of opportunities for maybe lay people, maybe people who come with different kinds of skills or different kinds of backgrounds who think this is God's work and God may have put us on a path with all of you in this room? What can we do if we want to raise our hands and say, sign me up?
The answer is, what can't you do? There are so many volunteer opportunities. To me, some of the most important volunteer opportunities, the ones that the men and women of St. Leonard's get the most out of, and you as a volunteer would get the most out of, is mentoring. We have a very active mentoring program at Grace House. We are launching a mentoring program for St. Leonard's House. The key to St. Leonard's magic is one-on-one personal connection with people that care. If as a mentor you can show up once or twice a month, if you can be available by text, if you can be available by email, if you can participate in a life skills class with some of the men at St. Leonard's House or at St. Andrew's Court, just be there, listen to the discussion that's going on in the life skills class, the issues that they're dealing with. Be there as a sounding board, be there as one who has a worldview that a lot of the men and the women don't have. You wouldn't be surprised, or maybe you'd be surprised to know that a lot of the men have never left their particular neighborhoods. They have a very small box in which they view the world from. And so sharing your worldview, sharing your experiences in a very one-on-one way can make a huge difference in the lives of the men and women at St. Leonard's. Beyond that direct service experience, being a teacher in the adult high school program, coming to the Michael Barlow Center and participating in mock interviews, coming to St. Leonard's and providing or serving food to the men and providing fellowship when we have our meals in the evening, coming to Grace House and participating in some of the group sessions there. There are a myriad of hands-on direct service opportunities. Without fail, every volunteer that I talk to says, yeah, I came there, yeah, I did something, but I took more away from the experience than I was able to give. And that's by participating in the stories and in the journey.
And I would like to just add that if anybody has a special skill that maybe we're not thinking about, or that we can ask our residents what they are missing and what they might want. If somebody has a special skill that you think you can share with us, we're open, because if it means that it's going to enhance their lives, some people might be able to teach financial literacy, or maybe somebody's just interested in teaching knitting. We have a lady that's coming in who's going to do a sewing class for us. Whatever your skills you have, we are here to listen, and our arms are open for any volunteers.
The minimalist thing that you could think of, I don't know what that is. Those are things that you can provide. Those are things that you can come and say, no, let me go do this. Yes, it's when she spoke about the serving of the food, it's a time where you have the young individuals come, which we can speak to them and they can show how to give back in the same. That's when I enjoy that. I enjoy them. I always call the young people little people because They're little peoples, that's what they are. And I enjoy the little peoples coming because if they are thinking to do something that's not kosher with mom and dad, you can sit here and listen to stories of individuals who can tell you that no, mom and dad knows right now. I know you think you need to be in control of whatever it is. No, you don't. You need to be in control of listening. And a lot of times, I say that I think I've been blessed with that ability when it comes to talking to little people, that I can tell when I have them as far as listening. You know when it just goes in out there, they're listening and they're sitting in there. But those, some smaller than that, them just come to serve, them come to do some work with us while we're working and clean up all those things that are needed. Because another reason that I came to St. Leonard's is because my little brother told me that, I have a place for you to live, but we have his wife and his stepdaughter, I don't know them. So he said, coming home, straight home, not knowing neither one of them would be kind of awkward. So you go to St. Leonard's and you can slowly transition back into knowing family members. And it's stuff like that people take for granted, but it's needed. The key word in that is transition.
See, I was just going to thank you for mentioning the role of God in your life. I was going to ask the general question about Christian or religious programming at St. Leonard's, if you could talk about that.
Sure. St. Andrew's Episcopal Church is located right on the campus and is available to all of the men and women of St. Leonard's Ministries. We also have Bible studies, some that are done by Episcopal priests, some that are done by Baptist priests. We sort of welcome everybody's faith tradition at St. Leonard's. We don't prescribe any particular one. Most of the men that I speak with have a faith, and they have a higher power and they have a belief in God, however they define it, and most accredit their success to that higher power. So we're very open, but there's a heavy Episcopal presence, obviously.
You talked about volunteer opportunities. One of my experiences of St. Leonard's is that many of the men and women, when they get there, what they have on is really all they have. And when I say all they have, I mean toothpaste, toothbrushes, suits, clothing, and especially as they start to train the men and women, they need clothing to go to interview places. And so clothing drives, food, it's very, as they said, anything that you can think of in the smallest area, because the people come with nothing. And you talked about a gentleman who'd been in prison for 47 years. When I was in formation, I did a Bible study there, and I met a gentleman who'd been in prison for 25 years. And he went into prison and he was amazing. That was before it was internet. And he didn't know about email, didn't know about the internet. And so we talked about basic stuff. So there's a lot of opportunities there. So thanks for coming today, by the way.
Thank you.
Yes, I'm
Yes.
This is more of a basic question. It seems from our friend's experience here that he showed up at the door and wasn't let in, and only by virtue of persistence. What is the process for getting into St. Leonard's House? Is there an application process? Is there a wait list? What happens to those who can't get in? Sort of, can you speak to that a little bit?
Yes to all of the above. Men and women in prison are made aware of St. Leonard's, whether it's a flyer on a bulletin board or more likely field service representatives at the particular institutions are aware of St. Leonard's and will make recommendations to some of the men or women to pursue an application with St. Leonard's. There is a written application process. There's an essay requirement, like why do you want to come to St. Leonard's and are you ready to make a change? They are sent to Chris and to Holly Christian, who has been our program director at Grace House. They review the applications, and it's a suitability analysis, really. Where are you at? What kinds of incidents have you had in prison? Have you shown a propensity to want to make a change in your life? Have you had a continued history of problems or skirmishes inside of prison? Chris and Holly will then have a phone interview with the men and women while they're still in prison, and they'll make a determination. There are very few sort of automatic, we will not take you. We cannot take sex offenders, but beyond that, there's maybe one or two minor categories.
GPS registration, and some individuals haven't been convicted of crimes where the victims was underage because there's still living limitations on where they can live, where they can go to school, where they can work, if the victim is under 17.
But we don't have automatic, you're not considered. Murder, not a problem. Violent history, not a problem. It all depends on our reading of where you're at. Are you ready to make that change? Are you not ready to make that change? Chris makes that determination. Holly makes that determination. At the time that Chris came to St. Leonard's, he didn't follow the normal application process, so his was a bit unusual. But there's a reason that Chris came to St. Leonard's, and his description of the courtyard, I think, is an amazing description. I think God brought him to St. Leonard's, and I think the work that Chris does now is the most amazing work that's done at St. Leonard's. The role model that he is to Chris and to the other men that are there and the countless case managers that he has trained along the way, I can only attribute that to God's work.
What percentage of people who apply and would otherwise get in have to be turned away because of lack of space or financial capacity for you guys?
So we have the ability to service 40 men at a time at St. Leonard's House and 18 women at a time at Grace House. In our permanent supportive housing, we have the ability to house another 59. So we have space for about 120 men and women at a time. That's a really, really small number, given that there are 3,000 women that are incarcerated and there's about 43,000 men that are incarcerated. So Chris gets stacks and stacks of applications. How many people would you guess that you reject on a
I'd
percentage
say
basis?
we're able to take 1 out of every 25, 1 out of every 30 people that apply. It's not that we don't want to help, but we are limited for space, and we do go through this selection process to see individuals that want to make a change in life. And in most cases, I'll tell you the truth, we take the people who don't want to change. Those are the ones that we make the difference with. But we turn around away a great deal.
Can I interject here? I know a lot of you have to go or are planning to go into the 11th service, so we can stay after and chat. I'm the Director of Development at St. Leonard's. My name is Sharon Kushner. I've left some literature on the back table if you'd like to pick up something on your way out. But I also want to address what can you do, especially in light of your interest in mass incarceration. You can come and do direct service, and you can help us provide for the men and women that are there now, but you can also help us grow. We would like to open more houses. We would like to provide more space. We don't want to stay the size we are. So if there is any room in your heart for us, we would be really happy to share some of our visions with you, and I know you'll be excited about it. So just wanted to say that.
Yep. We have plans.
Thank you very much, everybody.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much.